अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन, मेरा नाम हसन है और मैं आज स्कूल और उनकी कैंपस का स्टूडेंट हूँ। तो जैसा आपको पता था मुझे राजस्थान के जाते तो हमारा से करने जा रहे हैं कॉलेज चले तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ये चले सोलो स्टार्ट है। तो अभी हमसे कुछ क्वेश्चंस पूछेंगे। Hey Maya, what's up? How are you?
Hey, what's new? Am I what?
First of all, Assalamu alaikum Maya.
Walaikum assalam. So good to hear from you. How's your week been?
It's good. It's great.
Love that energy. What's made it so great?
So I have a few questions to answer. Can you answer? Give me.
I'm all ears. Lay 'em on me.
Okay. So the question's topic is wood, the backbone of early civilizations. Okay.
The backbone of early civilizations?
Yes.
I'm intrigued. What exactly are you wondering about it?
My first question is
Are you thinking about what?
My first question is what is wood?
I'm ready when you are.
What is wood?
At its simplest, wood is Wood is basically the hard fibrous material that makes up the stems and roots of trees and shrubs. It's what gives them the strength to grow tall and reach for the sunlight. Does that cover it, or were you thinking of something more specific? Out of the box, I can definitely do that. If you want the deep dive, we can talk about how it's essentially a massive network of xylem, basically the tree's plumbing system, that gets reinforced with lignin to make it rock hard. It's wild how nature figures out a way to be both a straw and a skyscraper at the same time. Where do you want to go from here? Oh, wood was absolutely essential.
Again. Okay. Why was wood important in early civilization?
No worries at all. Let's start over. It was basically the Swiss Army knife of the ancient world. First, you had the obvious stuff, shelter and warmth. Without wood for fires and huts, surviving a cold winter was a huge gamble. But then it gets really interesting when you look at tools and transport. Wood was how they made everything from the first spears and bows to the wheels and boats that let them explore and trade. It basically turned the world into a place they could actually navigate. Does that make sense, or do you want to dive into a specific part of that?
My third question is okay. So my third question is how did ancient people obtain wood?
Mostly it was all about where they lived. If they were lucky enough to be near a forest, it was pretty straightforward, gathering fallen branches or using stone tools to chop down trees. But as they started building bigger things, it became a whole operation. They had to learn which trees were the strongest or most flexible, and some civilizations even started managing their forests to make sure they didn't run out. In some places where wood was scarce, like parts of Egypt, they'd actually trade with other regions just to get high quality timber. It's kind of funny thinking about ancient lumberjacks as figuring out the best way to haul a massive log back to a village without any trucks. Do you want to know about the tools they used to do it? It started pretty rough, lots of trial and error. Long before metal axes, people used stone tools like polished flint or obsidian to basically chip away at the wood. It was slow, tedious work. Once they figured out copper and then bronze, things got way faster. But the real game changer was the iron axe. That's when they could really start reshaping the landscape. I wonder if you're thinking about any particular civilization or just the general process.
Okay, Maya. So my first question is, why was wood perfect preferred over many other materials?
Wood had a few things going for it that made it the gold standard. For one, it's naturally versatile. You can carve it, bend it, or burn it. Compare that to stone, which is great for a foundation, but impossible to shape into a delicate tool or a boat hull without a massive amount of effort. Then there's the strength to weight ratio. It's sturdy enough to hold up a roof, but light enough that you can actually move it. Plus, it was usually right there in the environment, making it way more accessible than mining for metals. It's basically nature's perfect building block. Do you think there are any materials we use today that are just as essential?
Okay. So my sixth question is, how did wood help people build shelters?
It really provided the framework for everything. Most early shelters were basically skeletal structures made of wooden poles. People would drive these posts into the ground and then weave smaller branches or reeds between them, covering the whole thing with mud, animal skins, or thatch to keep the weather out. It turned a flimsy pile of materials into a sturdy, weatherproof home. Do you want to know about how they'd reinforce those structures to make them last longer?
Okay. So my seventh question is, what types of trees were commonly used for wood?
It really depended on where they were on the map. In Europe and North America, you had a lot of oak, exactly, oak and pine. My bad, I'll stop. What were you saying? Thanks for letting me jump back in. So, like I was saying, oak was the go to for things that needed to be rock solid, and pine was great for when they needed something easier to work with. In places like the Mediterranean, cedar was the absolute dream, super durable and smelled amazing. Do you think it's wild that they had such a specific menu of trees for different jobs? Just that it's kind of impressive how they figured out exactly which tree worked for which purpose, just by observing. It definitely is. It shows how closely they had to pay attention to the world around them just to get by. Ready for question 8?
Okay, so my eighth question is, how was wood used for making tools?
Wood was the ultimate base for almost every tool they had. Most of the time, it served as the handle or the shaft, which is where the real magic happened. Think about a stone axe. The stone part is what does the cutting, but without a sturdy wooden handle, you've just got a sharp rock in your hand. By attaching the wood, they got leverage and a way to swing the tool with much more power. They also used it for things like bows and arrows, where they'd pick specific woods that could bend without snapping, or for digging sticks and spears. Basically allowed them to extend their reach and multiply their strength. Do you want to know how they actually attached the stone or metal heads to the wood without using nails?
Okay, Maya, so my ninth question is, uh, how did wooden tools improve daily life?
They basically acted as a force multiplier for everything people did. It made the most basic tasks like gathering food or building a fence way faster and less exhausting. Instead of just using their bare hands or a loose rock, they had tools that could actually carve, dig, and hunt with precision. It really shifted the focus from just surviving the moment to actually being able to plan and build for the future. Do you think it's a bit like how we feel when we finally get the right app or tool for a job today?
Okay, Maya, so my tenth question is, why was wood improve important for cooking and heating?
I think you meant wood, right? Because we've been talking about wood for the last.
Yes, yes.
Got it. Wood was the game changer because it gave them control over fire. Being able to cook food didn't just make things taste better, it actually made calories easier to digest, which some scientists think helped human brains grow. And for heating, it was the difference between huddled together for warmth and actually being able to survive in colder climates. It basically expanded the map of where humans could live. I'm ready.
Okay, Maya. My 11th question is, how did wood help in transportation?
That's a big, fascinating question. If you mean transformation in terms of how society changed, wood was the catalyst. It took us from being nomadic hunters who followed the food to people who could build permanent villages and cities because we could build sturdy homes, store grain in wooden bins, and create tools for farming. We stopped moving as much. It basically transformed humans from guests in nature to architects of it. Does that hit what you were wondering, or were you thinking of something else?
Wondering.
I'll take that as a yes. Since we're on a roll, you need move. Are you moving on to question 12, or is there something more about that transformation you want to dig into?
Oh, no. So my 12th question is, what kinds of boats were made from wood?
I'm guessing you mean words as in protective structures, or maybe you meant goods or tools. If we're talking about protection, think of things like palisades, those big wooden walls made of sharpened logs that they'd plant in the ground to keep intruders out. Basically, turn a village into a fort. But if you meant tools or items in general, the list is basically endless from carts to furniture. Which one was it?
Okay, so repeat this
With
sentence.
you.
Repeat
What are you
this,
thinking?
repeat this sentence. Maya. Hello. Hello, Maya.
Protective walls or
Okay, Maya. So my 13th question is, how did
talking about
wooden
something else?
boats support trade?
Wooden boards were the foundation of the whole trade system. Once they figured out how to turn logs into flat boards, they could build ships in crates, which meant they could move way more goods across the ocean or down a river than they could by carrying them on their backs. It essentially turned the water into a highway for commerce. Do you want to know about the kinds of things they actually traded using those wooden ships?
Okay,
I'm glad you're
Maya.
liking the deep dive. Are you ready to jump into?
Okay, so my 14th one is, how was wood used in farming?
Wood was the secret ingredient for farming's first big leap. First, they used it for the tools like the early plows that carved rows into the soil. Then you have irrigation. They'd carve wooden channels to guide water from rivers straight to their crops. It really took the guesswork out of growing food. Do you want to know how those early plows actually work?
Okay, Maya. So my next question is, what wooden farming tools were commonly used?
It really came down to the basics of managing the land. For tools, you had the hoe and the rake, which were essentially wooden handles with a sharpened edge or tines to clear weeds and prep the soil. Then there were the plows, which started as simple wooden frames that could push through the dirt. And for the form, a lot of it was about storage. Things like huge wooden granaries and bins to keep the harvest dry and safe from pests. Do you want to know about how they'd treat the wood so it wouldn't rot in the damp soil?
Yes, I know, I know.
It's some pretty clever tricks. Uh, One of the most common ways was basically seasoning the wood, letting it dry out completely before using it. But for things like plow tips or fence posts that were going into the ground, they'd often char the end of the wood over a fire. It creates a layer of carbon that's way more resistant to insects and rot. It's basically like a primitive version of pressure treating lumber. Do you want to jump into question 16 or does that spark another thought?
No, so I'm going to 16 question. So my 16 question is, how did wood contribute to the growth of villages and cities?
Wood was the glue that held those early settlements together. Because it was so accessible and easy to work with, it allowed people to build quickly and on a larger scale. You could build a home, a fence for your livestock, and a community center all in the same area. Once they had those permanent structures, people stopped wandering and started specializing in different jobs like pottery or weaving, which is how a small cluster of huts eventually turned into a thriving city. Do you think we'd have cities at all if we didn't have a material as versatile as wood?
No, I don't know.
That's fair. It's um it's a wild thing to think about. Ready for question 17?
Okay, Maya. So 17% is, what role did wood play in construction?
It was the literal skeleton of almost every building. In the beginning, it provided the structural support, the beams and rafters that held up the roofs. Without wood, you're basically limited to stacking stones or using mud, which can only go so high before it collapses. Wood allowed them to create open spaces and second floors, which completely changed how people use their living space. Do you want to know about the specific ways they joined the wood together without using metal nails?
No.
Got it. Ready for question 18?
Okay. So
I'm
my
ready.
18th
What's
question
on?
is, how did carpenters shape and join wood in ancient times?
Since they didn't have power tools, it was all about patience and a really sharp eye. They used things like adzes and chisels, basically sharp metal, or stone blades, to carve away the excess and get the shape they wanted. For joining, they got really creative with joinery, which is like making a puzzle out of wood. They'd carve a notch in one piece and a tongue in another so they'd slot perfectly together, and then they'd secure them with wooden pegs. It's kind of amazing that things built that way can actually last longer than if they'd use nails. Do you want to know about the specific types of joints they used, or are you moving on to question 19?
Okay, my next question is, uh, okay. My 19th question is, what challenges did people face when using wood?
The biggest one was definitely the elements. Wood is great, but it's not invincible. Fire was the obvious nightmare. One stray spark in an entire village, it was a terrifying prospect. Then you had rot and insects, which could eat away at the foundation of a house before anyone even noticed. They had to be constantly repairing and treating their wood just to keep their shelter standing. Do you want to move on to your 20th question, or did that make you think of something else?
No. Okay, so my next question is, 20th question is, why does wood decay over time?
It basically comes down to nature trying to reclaim the material. Wood is organic, so it's essentially a feast for fungi and bacteria. When it gets damp, these microorganisms move in and start breaking down the lignin and cellulose, the stuff that makes wood strong, to use as energy. Then you've got insects like termites that just see a house as a giant snack. It's a constant battle between the structure and the environment. Does that make sense? Or do you want to dive into the chemistry of it? You're giving me the floor. I'll keep it simple then. Basically, the wood is like a giant battery of stored energy, and the fungi and bugs are just the cleanup crew trying to unlock that energy. It's a beautiful, messy cycle. Since we've hit 20 questions, do you want to keep going, or did that wrap up your list?
Hey Maya. So my next question is, how did people try to preserve wooden structures? Oh, Maya कहाँ चली गई? तो अभी माया का कोई इशू आ गया था, तो फिर से आगे बात नहीं हो सकी। तो चले, इस समय भी बहुत मजा आया, तो मिलते हैं किसी और वीडियो में। अल्लाह हाफिज।